On this channel, I've discussed a decent amount of RPG Maker horror games, and I very much made it apparent that I really am a fan of games that, though limited by the RPG Maker engine, still manage to tell amazing and spooky stories that keep me enthralled all the way through. So, since it's nearly been 2 months since I've uploaded on this channel, and I've got a lot of projects halfway done for said channel, I thought I may as well yap for a while about some of my favourite RPG Maker games, just to get a video out, because who doesn't like a tier list? However, despite the namesake of this channel being, horror, whilst most of the games I'm going to be talking about are horror, I threw in some non-horror games that I feel are of note. I will say, firstly though, this isn't all the RPG Maker games I've played, these are just some that I feel I have the most to talk about, or at least the ones I can remember. So, let's get into the tier list. If you notice, I have blurred the bottom of the screen, just so, I don't spoil all of my picks, so to speak. But you can probably guess what some of these are just because of the very iconic colour palettes. But I'll get into one of the easy ones I can talk about first. Fear and Hunger. Initially, when I heard about Fear and Hunger, I didn't want to play it for some reason. It seemed like very try-hardy, not my cup of tea. I heard it was inspired by Dark Souls and Berserk, which I'm very much a huge fan of. But I don't know, initially it didn't grab me. But then I gave in, bought it when it was on sale, really cheap, and I was hooked, and I wish I wasn't because the game's very hard. The game isn't perfect, don't get me wrong, it is still, especially the first one specifically, it is a buggy mess, but there is clearly so much lore, so much thought put into the game. It does have its issues, it does, but at the same time, I absolutely adore this game. Very easy to fall into. The talk mechanic that can let you just breeze through certain boss fights and enemies. The fact that you choose the backstory of whatever character you pick, and it changes how your run will be planned out, so to speak. Which gods do you pray to? Do you run straight into the dungeon so you get sprint with Gahara? I think this game's really good. I like all the party members. Moonless is the GOAT. The game's really great. There's not much else I can say about Fear and Hunger besides play it. Yes, it is very difficult and it can be hard to get into at the start. You will get jumped by the dogs at the start, or you'll just get insta-killed by the prison guards. I will also say, personally, I think the game is just as, enjoyable with censorship mods. Myself, as you can tell, I've probably got gameplay on screen with censored gameplay on, and it's just as enjoyable. You don't need to play the unadulterated 18 plus mega hardcore version. It's still enjoyable without that stuff. The OST and the ambience is fantastic. You've probably heard it in YouTube videos and not realized if you haven't played the game before. Yet again, I'll have it in the background. It's great. And I'll quickly say as well, Termina is also fantastic, don't get me wrong, but if Fear and Hunger 1 can be overwhelming at the start, Fear and Hunger 2, oh my lord, you've got double the characters, more mechanics, there's guns now instead of a bow and arrow. Feels like there's even more going on in Fear and Hunger 2, so it's just not as easy to go through. However, it is almost an objectively better game. It's not as buggy, there are more options. The moon from the sky looking like Majora's Mask. The game is great yet again. Both these games, phenomenal. You can get them dirt cheap. Most RPG Maker horror games. I suggest you get all of these, except for a couple that I'll get into shortly, but Fear and Hunger, phenomenal. You know it, I know it. Not much else to say, let's move on. Now, what's another weird one? Let's talk about another recent game that came out not too long ago. I might put it higher, but Look Outside is phenomenal. If you didn't know, I'm a huge fan of Lovecraftian horror, and that sort of, looking at the creature can just contort your body and stuff. I love that sort of body horror, and this game is filled to the brim with it. Not only is it filled with this messed up body horror, and it can be genuinely spooky and horrifying at times, but it's hilarious. It's written really well. It's just a really good game. The RPG mechanics aren't there's nothing super original or hardcore about it. It's not like Fear and Hunger where you're gonna lose limbs and stuff all the time. It's not like Omori where you have to balance emotions and stuff. Spoiler alert, Omori is down here. You can probably tell from the black and white blur on the bottom of the screen. But mechanically it's nothing too ridiculously crazy, but everything else around the gameplay is phenomenal. I'll probably just put it, I might just like it more than 2, to be honest. I probably like it more than Fear and Hunger 2. Look Outside is great. I highly suggest playing it. Yet again, really funny. It's just phenomenal. I can't suggest it more. And it's relatively recent. Personally, the thing that surprises me a lot is that these games are relatively new. The big boom of RPG Maker horror games was post 2010. Same sort of time as when creepypastas were kind of coming out and becoming popular. And there was kind of a big lull with RPG Maker horror games because all the creators who made the popular ones kind of dropped off the face of the earth and didn't make any more, right? Which is a shame. But then in the past 5 years or so, we've gotten a lot of good RPG Maker games just coming out, specifically horror ones and stuff. It's really great to see, and I'm very happy about it. I'm stoked. Look Outside, phenomenal game. Get it, buy it, play it. Awesome. What should I talk about next? Let's talk about something kind of controversial. I don't know if I'll put it here. I might even put it lower, right? So the Coffin of Andy and Leyley is... It's so stupid, right? It's ridiculously popular, but it's just a fetish game. The author it's just a thinly masked fetish game. And the reason it's in C and not lower, even though it should be, is despite that, it's just the intro. It's so intriguing. There are little good things about this game, right? I think the art style is like, it's nice to look at. It works. The art style's fine. Just the intro of like the entire concept of everyone's being blocked off from society, everyone's locked in their flats, and they have to become cannibals. That's fine. That's a really strong opening. But then the longer the game goes on for, I'm pretty sure there's still chapters coming out for the game, but at least when I played it, when there was a couple chapters, it's just fetish stuff. It's like, it's thinly veiled. It's so on the nose. And they don't even try, okay? Like, the horror aspects of it quickly fade away, but like the opening start with like the ritual and like the setting that is initially presented are really intriguing. And there are bits and pieces when you're like going through memories and stuff which are really cool. But as the game goes on, as I say, it just gets worse and worse and worse, and it's such a shame because such a strong opening and then it just falls off the face of the cliff. Play the game for like half an hour and then stop. That's my suggestion for this game. Might put it lower, who knows. I'll put Lisa the First at the top of B. Now, it is like better than Andy and Leyley, significantly so, right? But the reason it's not any higher is because, one, it's short because, it's kind of supposed to be, but at the same time, it's just kind of like a stepping stone to get into Lisa the Painful and Lisa the Joyful, because it's like, it's a lot of, background lore before you get into those games. And as such, it's like just kind of a walking simulator. There's not much going on. There isn't like, like with Lisa the Painful, there isn't any combat mechanics or anything really like that. You're just exploring and getting lore for like Brad's sister and stuff like that and all that kind of stuff. It's more so just like a lore dump, but the story that is being told is intriguing and messed up and horrifying. But yeah, there's not much to say about Lisa the First. If you played the other Lisa games, you've probably played it as well, just to get more lore. Like, gameplay-wise, there's not much to say about it. There's not really much going on, but the story itself does connect to Lisa the Painful and Lisa the Joyful. So we'll say Lisa the Painful, great freaking game. Why would I not put it higher? I don't know. I just think I like the three above it a little bit more. But the setting of Lisa the Painful, phenomenal. If you're unfamiliar with Lisa the Painful, the whole concept is, women gone. It's just a society of men that are all kind of slowly dying out. This one dude, the main character you play as, Brad, just finds like a little baby girl, and that's kind of a horrifying thought when you realize there's no other women around, so this child is kind of in danger immediately. Buddy. The setting itself, though, like, the art style is very deceptive because it looks not wholesome, but like it's like pixel art. You don't assume it'll be really horrifying, but it can be, especially with the setting and the story that is presented. It gets depressing, right? But at the same time, it can be goofy with like the soundtrack and some of the NPCs you come across, and like some of the humor in it is quite funny. But overall, the setting itself and the story that's being told is pretty grim. I'll say it's like similar sort of thing with Joyful, but instead, you're not playing as Brad anymore. It's a direct sequel to Lisa the Painful. You're playing as Buddy this time instead of Brad, because of the ending of Lisa the Painful. Spoiler alert: the main ending doesn't end well. Doesn't end well for Brad, and it just continues on from that. Lisa the Joyful, still also really good. Playing as Buddy, really fun, really awesome. I highly suggest it. Where should we go next? Let's go. Do I put it higher? Maybe I'll put Omori here. I love Omori yet again. Soundtrack, art style, really unique. And on top of that, Omori in of itself did something really unique with its combat system, with the emotion system, which I think is really cool. Even as an RPG Maker game, just looking at it, it looks amazing. And then when you like have those brief moments where you go into like flashbacks or you step into the real world, the complete tonal shift where it does step into horror and stuff like that, with like the phobias that you see in the game and stuff like that. It's horrifying, and especially when you step into the real world and you actually have a knife. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff in Omori. With a lot of these games, I'm going to be relatively vague when it comes to the plot, specifically with one of them I'm going to mention later on, because I want you to play them. Especially with Omori, if you haven't played it, it's phenomenal, it's great, soundtrack great, story phenomenal, gameplay great, highly suggested. I like it more than Termina, but they're both freaking great. What do I want to talk about next? Let's talk about Hylics. Hylics is pretty dope. I won't lie, I don't remember too much about the story of Hylics, but just looking at the game, you can probably tell why, because there's a lot going on. One thing I do really appreciate about RPG games in general, like RPG Maker games, not necessarily just horror ones, because Hylics is very much not an RPG Maker horror game, is just uniquity, things being unique, and the soundtrack is unique. Just looking at the game, stylistically, it is unique. It's all like stop motion animation. It's not, every other RPG Maker game is going to be pixelated, right? Or it's going to be some mixture of pixelated and like hand-drawn art. This is completely different. It mixes art styles and there's just so much going on. It's great. Yet again, Hylics is always dirt cheap. I'm pretty sure you can buy it for like less than £1 on Steam right now. I highly suggest you do. I would put Hylics 2 on here, but I remember very little about Hylics 1, but the soundtrack is phenomenal. That's what I remember the most about Hylics. The style of the game and the soundtrack will not leave you, right? It's peak. It is peak. The more I'm looking at these, the more I think this needs to go even further down, because screw that. I did put a lot of games on here that are just absolute classics, so I don't even think there's going to be anything in C. So let's go Out Oni. There's even a live-action movie of Out Oni. I remember that coming out ages ago. But Out Oni in and of itself is an absolute classic, right? Some of the horror moments in it still stick up very well. It's just not as, I don't know, the soundtrack is still great and iconic, right? I might put it like, yeah, again, I like all of these. Out Oni is still great, right? Like the OG original version is a bit clunky, but, as it got remade a bunch, it's still fine. Out Oni's great, not much to say on it. The story is decent, but the titular Out Oni is the pull, right? You look at the like promotional material when you're just, scrolling through YouTube or whatever, or scrolling through Steam, and you'll see this goofy looking face, and it just looks, it's uncanny, but it's not scary. But when it's presented to you in game with the music booming at you and it's chasing you down the corridor and it can insta-kill you, it's spooky, it hits you, and it's great. I love that. Nice little uncanny valley horror. I love that. It's perfect. Where should we go next? Let's go for another classic. The Crooked Man. I'd probably put The Crooked Man here. The thing is about The Crooked Man is it's an absolute classic, right? Like pretty much all of these so far. But one thing that kind of is annoying about The Crooked Man is that it's not like a singular game. It's part of a trilogy, if I remember correctly. Another one of these I have here, the Boogie Man, but we'll get into that later. Boogie Man, The Crooked Man, and The Hanged Man, I think, is the three. But I think The Crooked Man was the first, and as a result, it's the most succinct and like full together plot. That's why I prefer it out of the three. I think it's the best overall because it doesn't have some of the shortcomings that the other ones do, but I'll get into them when I talk about the Boogie Man. But the Crooked Man in of itself, it's like standard pixel RPG Maker art style. Soundtrack's fine. The artwork is nice and creepy. I don't know how to describe it. It is an absolute classic. This is rose-tinted glasses for me. I won't lie. Playing through this years ago and I think I watched PewDiePie play it initially. Fantastic. If you play The Crooked Man, you love it. It's building on the classic nursery rhyme of The Crooked Man, on a crooked hill, on a crooked star, with a crooked penny and a crooked house, or etc, etc, etc. And just playing on that. Same with like the Boogie Man and the Hangman. It's like a story that goes into a lot of, obviously most of these go into some very adult themes, but Crooked Man specifically goes into like sewers and stuff like that. It's very depressing, but it's still very intriguing and very, like, it grabs you, and I very much love The Crooked Man. It's great. Where should we go next? Let's talk about the one that came after. I'm going to put the Boogie Man significantly lower. Probably, yeah. The thing that, okay, so The Crooked Man initially, when it first came out, The Crooked Man still now, it doesn't have voice acting. Like most RPG Maker games in general, they won't have voice acting. But for some reason, the Boogie Man did, and I don't know why, but hearing the voice acting, it didn't hit the same.
Try looking where you're going before you start yelling at people, young lady.
I don't know whether it was the performances themselves or just actually hearing the voice alongside the pixel art. It just didn't hit me the same. Hearing a voice alongside the creepy stuff that's happening, it just kind of ruined the tension for me. The Boogie Man's fine overall, like going to this creepy castle, blah, blah, blah. It's fine. It's just, I don't know, it does not hit the same. At least when I played it, the version I had voice acting, and it just didn't work for me as much. It's still fine, still decent, just not great, in my opinion. But let's go on. What's another classic? So, you might not be able to tell because the title's cut off at the top, but this is To the Moon. This is an old RPG Maker game from 2012 that was getting played through all over the place. If you've heard of To the Moon, you've probably watched someone play through, or you played through it yourself. And it's very much not horror like the rest of these. To the Moon is not a horror one, but it is a very, very poignant story about memories. And as I said, this is the game where I don't want to tell you anything about it. If you were to play any of these games, if you were to take this as a recommendation, play any of the games on here that you hadn't played before, I'd say play To the Moon, because the story is just very heart-touching and depressing, and you should just play it. You should just play To the Moon. It's very depressing. Go get depressed like I did. That's all I've got to say. To the Moon is phenomenal. The art style might not be immediately appealing because it does kind of look like, Terraria or Stardew Valley, because it looks like very wholesome pixel arty stuff, but it very much does get pretty depressing. So yeah, play To the Moon. We'll go to the remake of Corpse Party. Well, one of the remakes of Corpse Party, the most recent version of the first Corpse Party. It's a classic, the story of going through the haunted school, all the death animations. The story is actually pretty decent. I would say don't watch the anime for Cops Party. Whilst it does have one, it's pretty dog water, and it's only like 4 episodes, and they have to really cram the story down a bunch. Cops Party does have its cliches, but soundtrack is iconic. At least the first one is. And for the most part, it's not one of those RPG Maker horror games where like the puzzles are mega obtuse. There's a little bit of that, but most of the time it's just very easy to grasp and very easy to get into. Corpse Party is a classic, right? If you know anything about RPG Maker horror games, you've played or watched someone play through Corpse Party. I don't need to tell you, right? It's goated. So, moving on. Okay, so I recently re-went through Mogeko Castle for the sake of a video, and I made a thumbnail and everything. I've pretty much scripted it entirely, but I just haven't made it yet because I've been busy editing for my other channels and editing for other people. I've just been very busy. But I really like Mogeko Castle. It's just, I might put it further down because there's a lot of issues that it has. Yet again, OST and the world of Mogeko Castle are really intriguing, and it is very heavy on symbolism and stuff like that, and it is also just very campy and on the nose and just kind of cheeky with like these random cat things that are obsessed with prosciutto and just spicy chips and stuff, really goofy stuff. But then at the same time, it's also this really creepy and messed up story where this girl's going to get tortured and just mutilated and messed up and stuff. But at the same time, the thing that really holds Mogeko Castle back is that it feels as if there was supposed to be a sequel, which there was planned initially, but for some reason, if I remember correctly, the development was stopped specifically due to a combination of like, you know, the creator being busy and also the Ukraine war, because specifically the main character of the second game was going to be like the Russian Mogeko, you know, from Mogeko Castle, and like they didn't want to make a game about a Russian character when there's a huge crisis going on, which makes sense. But it's such a strange thing that is one of the key factors that stopped the sequel to this game. And as a result, it feels like a lot of the symbolism is kind of half-cocked in the sense that there's a lot of pieces missing that we don't have, because the main character of Mogeko Castle in all the trailers and stuff appears in the sequel. So we're supposed to get like more of her story, but we never will, because the sequel's probably never going to come out, which is an absolute shame. Maybe it's still being worked on, maybe it isn't, but I doubt it at this point. But overall, the story of Mogeko Castle is fun, it's humorous, but it is also incredibly dark, depraved, and messed up. Okay, it is. I might put it a little bit further down, but I do yet again have rose-tinted glasses for it, and Mogeko Castle is pretty decent. What else we got at the bottom? Since I've already made a video on it, I'll talk about it now. I think Misao is like goated. This isn't even Misao, I'm lying. Mad Father is goated. Yet again, absolute horror classic. Mad Father, little girl with a mini chainsaw, because of course she has a mini chainsaw, but it's like a classic haunted house, like haunted mansion story, you know, going through the castle, seeing zombies and experiments and stuff. The puzzles aren't too difficult. There isn't a lot of backtracking, at least in like the Steam version. They removed all the backtracking so you can just kind of teleport. The true ending isn't too hard to get, though the extra game modes added in the newer versions paint a lot of context of how her mother was also just as messed up as the titular Mad Father. I have made a video on it, feel free to check it out, but Mad Father is goated. I very much enjoy Mad Father, you should too. It's really not a complicated one. It is very much kind of like the standard for RPG Maker horror, right? It is what you think of when you think of an RPG Maker horror game, where it's like simple puzzles, relatively simple plot and narrative, there's jump scares, there's subtle horror, and there's a good soundtrack. It's nice. Mad Father's great, but above that we have Misao. I prefer Misao over Mad Father. If I'm gonna be completely honest, the soundtrack for Misao, I still use that in videos now. I love the soundtrack for Misao. I do have my issues with Misao, where it's like it gets cartoonishly evil at points, and they try to humanize the serial killer nonce teacher, which is really bad. But everything else besides those two things are phenomenal. Misao is an absolute classic, you know it. And I know I've been saying this throughout, but RPG Maker horror games, or just RPG Maker games in general, because they are limited by the RPG Maker engine, they do get very creative with the music, and the music tends to be really good for these games. Like Fear and Hunger's ambience, Omori's soundtrack, Hylics is very experimental and really good. I think my favourite track is, I think it's called like Meat Computer or something. Lisa, especially in some certain areas, has like bopping music, really great. Mogeko Castle themes are very cartoony, and you know, like when the main villain at Mogeko shows up, her like theme is really bouncy and hoppy. Mad Father's like ambience is nice, but Misao's like wholesome happy ending song is just 10 out of 10. Goated. Not much else to say about Misao. Watch my video on it. Okay. What should we talk about next? Let's go one of the OGs. We all know the OG. Where should I'd probably put it above Corpse Party. Yume Nikki is kind of timeless because of how experimental it is. Because there isn't like a real story to Yume Nikki. There isn't like a linear narrative as there is with like, say, the Lisa games or Hylics or Mogeko Castle or Fear and Hunger. There isn't like an end you are striving towards, right, so to speak, or at least in the traditional sense. You're not trying to escape the castle. You're not trying to see this villain or fight the boss. You're not trying to escape somewhere. You know, Yume Nikki, Yume, dream, Nikki, diary. It's just your dream diary. The main character's dreams, and you're going in them and seeing horrendous things. You know, it's very intriguing. You know, Yume Nikki is timeless. It's like iconic. It's for good reason. It's this very experimental, strange little game that blew up in popularity for good reason. The art direction is great. The thing people point to about Yume Nikki, because it's what sticks out the most, because since there is no real story, the two things the game has to rely on is the gameplay, which overall, for Yume Nikki, there isn't really any gameplay. You're just kind of walking and changing forms, and that's really about it. So it has to rely on the soundtrack and the ambience and the art style, which it just does really, really well, which is why everyone who's played Yume Nikki likes it. Or if they don't like it, it's because they just kind of feel directionless, which I also understand, right? That is one of the also kind of like, not bad sides of Yume Nikki, but it's kind of one of the understandable things where people may not like it because you don't really have a set end goal, so to speak. But moving on, we've only got 4 left, and I've been yapping. Yume Tuki, I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember too much about, but I feel like I remember it being just a lot of the same of Yume Nikki. I'm pretty sure it's not by this, I don't think it's by the same creator, but yeah, again, Dream Diary, very avant-garde visuals, very strange, really cool. There's not much else. Everything I've said about Yume Nikki, tone it down a little bit and then apply it to Yume Tuki. We've got 3 left. I'll save the horror one for last, so let's talk about the fun one. Suits. Where would I put Suits? This specifically is the like remake Absolute Power with like the updated graphics and like the just more stylized visuals. Suits, soundtrack great, art style great. The concept in of itself, this like turn-based RPG and this dystopian twisted version of the world where it's like everything is corporatized, corporate, whatever the word is, everything's corporate, and you the main character trying to figure out who he was because he's got amnesia. It's really fun, really cool. It's not horror. There is no horror in Suits at all besides how true to life it's becoming, but it's just really fun and the soundtrack's fun. It's just really funny. It's just a cool game. Suits is just really cool. Not much else to say. And I've got 2 left. I know a lot of these I've talked about more than I have others, but that's just because I'm going to have to edit this video within a single day. And that's a lot. But we've got 2 games left. And now one of these has kind of arguably one of the best soundtracks in any RPG Maker game in general. And I think that might give it away. And just from the soundtrack alone, and it's kind of like, okay, I'll just pull over real quick, it's Off. I'm not putting it there, I'm just putting it there while I talk about it. Now, Off is kind of like the Fight Club of RPG Maker horror games. And when I say that, I mean, when you hear about Fight Club, it's like, you know, everyone already knows the twist. It's the same with Planet of the Apes or Shutter Island. These are movies that are centered around this big twist at the end, but they become so popular, everyone knows the twist. It's the same when you play Off. When you're playing as the batter throughout the entire game with this happy-go-lucky music, and when you get to the end of the game, the batter's not such a nice person. You're going around beating the people to death with a bat. What did you expect? Off is really cool, really fun, really awesome. I know a lot of people have issues with the remake. I think something to do with music or maybe the mechanics. A lot of people have had complaints about, but I'm uncultured. Maybe I just haven't noticed them. But Off in of itself is like goated. Off is like the RPG Maker game, right? Off is like there's not too much horror to it. Arguably when you get to the end, sure, because the design of, like, spoiler alert, like the final version of the batter you fight is friggin' horrifying. That design is creepy as hell, right? Like, I mean, most designs in the game are relatively creepy, but the game itself isn't like very horror, right? Because it's not a horror game. It's just like this weird, indie RPG game. But the soundtrack, I mean, Pepper Steak, oh my god, it is an absolute timeless classic. You know it. I'll be playing it in the background. Timeless game. Now, the last one I'm going to talk about, I don't have too much to say about, because it is also another classic, and I'm going to be talking about, where do I put Ebe? I like Ebe. Do I put it below Mogeko Castle? I like Ebe. I think Ebe is great. I don't think there's not much bad to say about Ebe. I think in regards to, like, art style, at least from the version I last remember playing, it's like the pixel art isn't as elaborate as a lot of the other games on here. Like, there isn't too much going on visually for the most part. When it gets to the horror aspects to it, it looks a lot nicer. Like, being trapped in the art museum and stuff, of course, it's going to get very, like, there's going to get some very cool visuals. The soundtrack as well, with the string guitar, very nice. It's just one thing about Ebe that I absolutely adore. It's always the painting. Like, the one thing I will always remember about Ebe is the painting, because fan art of that used to go around back in the day all the time because of how creepy that moment was with the creature coming out of the portrait, that big blue face. Everyone remembers that. It was an absolute absolute classic moment. Got it. But yeah, that's pretty much my list, if I'm going to be honest. Yes, as I said in the intro, these aren't the only RPG Maker games I've played. I have played a decent amount more, but the recording is already half an hour long at this point, so I don't want to be spending too long on making this video. I just want to get something out for this channel because it's quite dead at the moment. But still, let me know if you agree down below. I will say this: these placements aren't final. They can change very much so, especially some of the lower ones like Hylics, the Lisa games, Yume Nikki, Aoni, stuff like that, just because I haven't played them in a relatively long time, and as a result, maybe my memory of them is a bit different. But Andy and Leyley can stay at the bottom. That's straight trash. I know there's so much artwork of it, but Jesus Christ, like, it's just a pornography game. It's just straight prawn, as the kids say. Like, it's just such a shame because the intro was so intriguing, and then after the intro, it's just upsetting and bad. Let me know if you guys agree down below. Let me know some of your favourite RPG games, not necessarily just horror ones. Let me know how you feel about, for example, The Witch's House, or Coffin of Ashes, or Hanged Man. But, you know, there's plenty of other RPG Maker games out there, so that I have played, that I do enjoy. Let me know how you feel about them down below. But with that being said, toodles my doodles, hopefully I see you in the next one. The next video will probably be Mogeko Castle, or maybe a creepypasta video, depending on how I feel. But yeah, toodles my doodles, hopefully see you in the next one. Peace.